Hi, I'm John, and if you haven't been to a HackOut yet, you don't know what you're missing out on.
Startup Weekend HackOut is the world's first LGBTQIA Startup Weekend event.
My name is Lindsay Nguyen, and I can tell you from personal experience, you should absolutely come to HackOut. You won't be disappointed.
The hardest part of starting up is starting out, and our mission is to inspire entrepreneurs in the LGBTQIA community to learn the ropes of validating an idea for a startup and turn that idea into a full-blown business venture. In just 54 hours, you'll experience the highs, lows, fun, and pressure that make up life at a startup. As you learn how to create a real company, you'll meet the very best mentors, investors, co-founders, and sponsors who are ready to help you get started.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julian, and welcome to the second of our pre-event workshop series for HackOut 2020. You're here in my apartment, you can see, because, well, unfortunately, everything we're doing right this year is being done online, virtually, and so we're going to see a bit about each other's lives. Sorry, I'm so nervous for doing this. Okay, so let's talk about HackOut. HackOut is a great multi-day event coming up next month, where LGBTQIA+ entrepreneurs from around the country who have got great startup ideas they might want to pursue. They'll be pitching those ideas, forming teams, and those teams will work during the course of the weekend to launch a new startup, or several new startups, hopefully. Of course, HackOut's more than just about building businesses, it's also about building community. Last year, as you saw in the photos we just showed you, over 100 people gathered in Austin to be part of this 4-day event. This year, unfortunately, because of coronavirus, we're doing everything online virtually, but what that enables for us to do is allow people from across the country and around the world to be part of this year's event. Actually, let me show you a map of all the places people have applied to be part of HackOut this year. You can see there's a lot of people based in the US, but also people from around the world. We're looking forward to helping build connections with LGBTQIA+ people from around the world who have an interest in entrepreneurship. Another thing we're doing for HackOut this year is also increasing the access you have to the mentors. Every year we have mentors who come to the event and plug into those teams for the weekend and help those teams, advise those teams on the questions they have about entrepreneurship and how the direction their startup should go. While normally a mentor connection is focused on that weekend, this year we're having the mentors do these workshops in every Monday before the event happens to help you learn even more about entrepreneurship. Last weekend, we had a great workshop provided by Gordon Dowdy, one of the co-founders and the president of Capital Factory in Austin. And he talked about idea validation, which is how you take all those wonderful ideas you have for startup in your head and figure out which ideas are really worth spending your time and effort pursuing. It's a great workshop, and it's still available on the HackOut website at hackout.startout.org. Today, we have another wonderful mentor devoting some of her time to help you learn about entrepreneurship. And to introduce her, I want to invite Desmond Thomas up. Desmond's one of the lead organizers for HackOut this year, and he'll be introducing the topic and the speaker. Desmond, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome back.
I'm doing great. I love your t-shirt, by the way.
Oh, yeah, matching. Good job.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Desmond Thomas. I am the co-lead for HackOut, along with Taylor McCaslin. I've been with HackOut for about 4 years now, and I'm super excited to take it into the digital age to an online format. So before we get started and I introduce our wonderful guest, I want to say thank you so much to our co-lead, Taylor McCaslin, who's making everything run so seamlessly behind the scenes.
Yes.
So if you are watching this event live, please, on whatever platform you're watching, say thank you, Taylor, in the comment section so that you can see that and feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside. But
making all these graphics happen.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Julian. We'll see you in a little bit. And I am super excited to introduce a phenomenal woman in the Austin startup scene and a close friend. Her name is Janice Omadeke. She is the CEO and co-founder of the Mentor Method, which is an enterprise platform helping companies keep and develop their diverse talent using the proven power of mentorship. Among many, many accolades, Janice is a 2020 Austin Under 40 nominee. She is the winner of Div Inc.'s Diversity Champion of the Year for the for the city of Austin. And she's going to tell us a little bit about her unique mentor journey, why she started her company, and walk us through some exercises that will help us all be better mentors. So before I hand it off to Janice, we are going to do a Q&A at the end of the event. If you have any questions that come up during her talk, please feel free to post them into the chat on whatever platform you're watching so that we have them accumulated for later and we'll talk about them. So, hi Janice.
Hey,
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, I'm going to let you take it away. The floor is all yours.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Janice Omadeke. Very excited to be here and to be supporting the HackOut community. Always excited to have more entrepreneurs and more ideation happening in the ecosystem. It's so important. That's where the real work is going to happen and where the real change takes place. So excited to talk about a key component of that, which is mentorship. So I'll share a little bit more about my own journey. So I'm from the DC metro area originally. I moved to Austin about 2 years ago through the Mass Challenge Accelerator here in Austin. And then after that, placed gold at Mass Challenge, got into Capital Factory's Accelerator, and then received funding, and just it's been an amazing opportunity being in Austin. And this has been a great time for me to just evaluate mentorship as an entrepreneur. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that the mentors I've met through my 5 years, almost 5 years of having the mentor method have made such an impact on both my personal and professional life that I really hope you get something out of HackOut and find those critical mentors as well. So for today, we're going to get into a little bit of brainstorming, but I'd like for you to have a pen and paper to do that. And also keep an open mind. You know, if you're watching this, you're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, you have that creative mindset, wanting to change the world. So bring that energy with you as you start evaluating the types of mentors you'll need through HackOut and outside of the HackOut environment. For today's session, we're going to get into defining mentorship and Mentorship 101 and really dig into how to find the right mentor for you and how to prepare for your mentor meetings. This program has this concentrated opportunity to just learn from so many brilliant minds on a global scale this year. So I want to make sure that you feel equipped and prepared and comfortable to be able to do that effectively. And then, of course, Q&A. So as you'll see, I have it broken out between mentor and advisor so that we can define both, especially as an entrepreneur. Sometimes there's an overlap of the two, but it's good to understand from a baseline level the difference between them. That way you use the right terminology while you're interacting with these individuals. So a mentor is a subject matter expert or leader with attributes that are living examples of your career and business goals. So for example, for me right now, I love the mentors who have experience in business development, acquisition strategy, as well as that sales funnel expertise, because those are areas that I'm really focusing on with the mentor method. And so I'm finding that I'm attracting a lot of mentors who are experts in that space so that I can learn from them more readily. A mentor is also somebody that you can get concentrated advice on for areas in which you want to develop your business, as I just mentioned. Now, for the purposes of HackOut, an advisor will be somebody working with you throughout the weekend. They'll be program leads providing logistics, and they'll have a full understanding of HackOut operations. Outside of HackOut, there's typically some type of advisory shares agreement or a vested schedule for the way in which you interact with your advisors. They're almost like separate team members that come in at the right time to help you with certain areas of your business. I do want to clear up a few misconceptions before we continue, though, in terms of mentorship. So for me, I believe that mentorship requires connecting with somebody who really gets you at a core level. Yes, you may have your one-off informational sessions, but that mutual exchange of energy is something that's required in order for you to really sit back and learn from that person and then also teach them something in return. You want to go in with a vision and strategy for what you want out of that mentor engagement. So if it's during the HackOut weekend, then making sure that you have clear questions, know what you're looking for, the types of mentors you need, and then also make sure that there is a skill set alignment. Now, mentorship is not finding people based on age, race, or number of followers or any sort of other trivial point. It's really about having that chemistry and ethos alignment. Through my 5 years almost with the mentor method, I'm finding that that's been the most critical component to that. So I really hope you take that forward, if anything, as you start building out those relationships. I found the 4 following mentorship structures to be the most helpful in my professional career, but then also my entrepreneurship journey. So I'm a big fan of informational quick turn meetings. Typically, that's the start of a mentor relationship for me that becomes more structured and official. So these might be 1 or 2 time 30-minute virtual meetings or coffees or something where you can sit down, ask all of your questions, get their advice, find ways to also deliver value and help them without any sort of pressure of making the relationship official. I also saw a lot of value in structured mentorship structures. So that's come from accelerator programs such as Mass Challenge or through pitch competitions where they'll connect you to a pitch coach. And the value in those is that you have very clear guidelines, a start and end date, and both parties come to the table with a full understanding of what's expected of them. There's a level of training and onboarding that comes with a structured program that I find very helpful. As I mentioned before, though, a lot of my informational quick turn meetings have turned into a more structured mentorship relationship in that we know how long we'll be working together. We set up the cadence for how often we're meeting, and it's been great. Peer mentoring is something I'm extremely, extremely passionate about, and I don't think enough people talk about it because especially going through a program like HackOut and what you're going to be experiencing in September, it's important to build those close relationships to the people who are going through it at the same time as you. So for example, when I did MIT's Entrepreneurship Bootcamp in Seoul, South Korea, quite a few years ago now, I'm still close friends with a lot of those people that were in my cohort because there's that lived experience and shared experience. But we also were able to share different ways of how we've been creative in building our businesses. Sometimes, mentors have that future development that's helpful, but also understanding how people who are equally as broke as you are or just as confused are able to get on and sort of grow their businesses is really important to learn as well. Lastly, autonomous mentorship. So this can be finding experts with podcasts, newsletters, books, and articles that give you concentrated advice when you need it immediately. When I started the mentor method, I didn't have any entrepreneurship mentors. I had a couple of graphic design and developer mentors because that was my career previously, but I was still trying to figure out how I was going to build the business and refine it and all of these things. So I leveraged a lot of podcasts, a lot of autonomous learning, tons of books and articles to help me get started. Oftentimes I'm asked, okay, Janice, good to know what a mentor is, but how exactly do I find these unicorn human beings? So let's get into that now. I go through these 5 steps every time I'm sort of thinking about needing a new mentor or meeting somebody to figure out where I am in the business and what skills I need help with refining and mentorship around to help me accomplish those goals. So step 1 would be to set realistic goals. So let's say maybe your goal is to have your pitch deck ready for a pitch competition in October. So that's what you're focusing on. That's sort of your core area that you want to develop. Then I would go back to the previous slide and look at the mentorship types and see which one makes the most sense for your timeline. If you're in the middle of HackOut, that's a great time to use some of those quick turn meetings as well as starting to set up some more long-term ones for structured relationships. Start refining your outcomes because the clearer you get about what you want out of that mentor relationship, the faster you'll actually be able to get to it because you'll have the questions ready to ask your mentor and they'll be in more of a response mode than trying to co-build something while still trying to understand where you are in your journey. 4, think about the skills you need to refine to accomplish your goals. So let's say, for example, you have a business idea, you're trying to figure out if you go for it or not. What areas from your own skill set do you think you'll need in order to take that business forward? Start thinking about those. That way you know how to target your mentors. Speaking of targeting, point 5, find 3 to 5 people, whether that's in the HackOut network, somebody you meet during the virtual weekend, or LinkedIn, social media, asking your network, for people that have a proven track record aligning to your goals and timeline. So for example, I love learning from entrepreneurs who have had successful acquisitions or entrepreneurs who are just beautiful pitchers. I mean, some out there are just phenomenal at public speaking and pitching. And so I'm always excited to learn from them and get that mentorship so that I can learn how to refine those skill sets as well. I think it's important that while mentorship is very important, clearly, it's also important to make sure that you're finding the right mentors. It's never about just having mentorship for the sake of mentorship. You really want to find the right people because that's time that you're spending, that's time that the mentor is spending, and you want to make sure it's valuable for both people. So I call these my mentor considerations when you're building your target list that I mentioned on the previous slide. So ask yourself, what about this person interests me? Do you want this person as a mentor because you can learn from them, or is it a different reason? Sometimes people say, I want to be mentored by, I don't know, Elon Musk because apparently, he's coming to Austin or something, right? So they want to be mentored by him, yet their business thesis has no alignment to what he's focused on. And the only reason there's an interest in being mentored by him is because of his reach and his clout, which separate conversation for a separate day. But I think it's good to be clear on why you want that person to be your mentor. Look at what skills that person possesses that you want to refine to grow your business. So for example, during HackOut, you'll have mentors that are experts in, say, product development, value proposition, your minimum viable product, branding, and pitching. Can you see yourself feeling comfortable meeting with this person repeatedly? Let's say that the one-off informational meeting goes well, there's a chance that you might be re-engaging with that person consistently. When you're just starting to build a business, it's more important than ever to make sure that you're protecting your mental health. And one of the best ways to do that is to find the right mentors and people in your corner to help support your growth goals. Which is why my last question on the slide, is this person mutually respectful and communicative? So important. You don't want to leave every meeting feeling like a horrible person or feeling as though you don't have options. It's important that you feel empowered while still getting that constructive feedback to push you to be your best. So when you're building your plan, these are the questions I also want you to think about. So as we're starting to brainstorm before the HackOut, why do you want a mentor? What areas do you want to develop? What are 3 things you need to do before the HackOut in order to reach a high priority goal? Set your timeline, and then figure out how you'll identify 3 to 5 mentor targets. Once you have those targets and you're starting to engage with mentors, it's time to start thinking about how you're managing those mentor relationships. The first thing to consider is whether you're approaching the mentor through cold outreach or a warm introduction. I think both are easily applicable. I cannot tell you the number of people I have reached out to over LinkedIn stalking or Instagram or otherwise that have turned into incredible mentors for myself. When you are doing a cold outreach message, make sure that you keep it short, maybe 2 to 3 sentences max. Follow up maybe once a week, once every other week, and see if they're interested, but don't put too much pressure on them to solve all of your business problems. Especially since it's a cold outreach, you don't know if they're necessarily a fit. So it's good to just sort of play it cool and evaluate while also trying to generate value with them as well. For the warm introduction, if you're getting an introduction from somebody in your network, make it as easy as possible for them to just forward the email for a double opt-in. A double opt-in is when you send an email asking to meet somebody. The person that you asked for the introduction to then forwards your email over to the person you want to meet in order to get their buy-in and express an interest in actually connecting with you. That's very common. So when you're setting up your warm introduction email, again, keep it very short, saying, hi, person, I want to meet this person. I think that they could be a great person to learn from because of these 3 things. Here's my bio at the bottom. Do you mind facilitating an introduction? Thank you so much. And then see what happens from there. And feel free to follow up with them in a week or so if you don't hear anything. I mentioned this previously, but it's so important to see your mentors as a human first and a to-do list second. Always go in with a human-focused mindset, especially right now in this climate. We're in a post-George Floyd world. It's important to remember that everybody has a certain level of stress, whether they're aware of it or not, that's impacting the way that they show up to work every day. And it's impacting the way that they're mentoring people too. So make sure that you actually set aside time to connect with them, knowing their dog's name, how many children they have, where they're from, why they got interested in mentorship, why they're interested in connecting with you. Those things will build a real relationship. And just like any other space you would, friendship, romantic relationships, coworkers, it's important to just try to relate at a core level and then start building those building blocks for more strategic meetings. That's been honestly, that's one of the most important things to do when you're creating a mentor relationship. With some of my mentors, I've picked up their kids from school when they were slammed with something. I've sent flowers for the loss of an in-law. Like, I'm very close to my mentors, and it's because I took the time to actually get to know them. Third, set an agenda 24 hours in advance. Let's actually get into that whole prepping for the meeting because that's really important. So I think it's important to send an agenda 24 hours ahead of time. Make sure that you've done all of that back work with the other questions that I asked you before. That way you're strategically focused on maybe 2 to 3 things, maybe 4. But if it's a 30-minute meeting, I would say 3 is kind of pushing it. For your agenda, I would set it up as your overview, an introduction, with an attachment of your company overview or like what you want them to review. Second bullet point would be their overview of like who they are, where they're from, etc. And then get into your questions. So perhaps it's, I'd like your thoughts on slide 5 of my pitch deck. Does this work or not? How would you do it? Make sure that you're coming from like a learning and absorbing attitude as well. And then just thank you so much and send it out. During that actual meeting, it's important to just check your tech ahead of time. Make sure your mic is working, the lighting is right, whatever you need to do. I would also obviously pen and paper or type notes, whatever you'd like to do there that helps you absorb that information. But come from a place of learning and seeking to understand versus a spot of defense. I think sometimes, and I've seen this as a mentor for early stage pitch competitions and such, sometimes you care so much about your business idea that you're like, no. It's not me and the way I'm articulating this. You just don't understand. And that defensive stance when a mentor is trying to help you can be a little off-putting. So try to just observe, listen, obviously engage. If they got a point wrong, feel free to say it. You're empowered to do so. But make sure that you're not coming from a defensive stance. Now, assuming all goes well over your several meetings and you think you want to make it official, really ask yourself again, why? Do you really is there a mutual value and like a mutual positive relationship between you two? Have you seen certain milestones be reached? Could this person be better suited in an advisory spot versus a mentor? Really ask yourself those questions. And it's also a good opportunity to go to your peer network and ask them what their thoughts are and how they're forming those relationships to you. But when it's time to make things official, don't put too much pressure on it. Just simply say, you're enjoying getting to know them. You'd like to have them on as a mentor and maybe reach out to them once a month for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the topic. And that you'd like to keep them updated through your newsletter or whatever other ways of communication that you have. And then leave it up to them to see if that works. They might say they can meet with you quarterly. They might say once every other month. But really try to be flexible so that it's a symbiotic relationship and both people feel like they're getting something from it. It's also okay to not want to make things official with a mentor. Sometimes those fizzle out, but as I'm sure you're aware, the world is small, networks are small, and it's important to make sure that you're maintaining positive relationships, even if they may not be the best fit for a mentor engagement. So you could just say, thank you so much for your help. This was amazing. If it was amazing, don't lie. But, thank you so much for your help. I appreciated learning these 3 things from you. I would love to stay in touch as I continue on in my journey. But this was really helpful. I'm glad that we had a chance to meet. That's typically a good way of saying it without needing to make it a Dear John letter or some sort of, over the top way of ending a formal mentor relationship. I'm going to close with 2 final points. The onus of the relationship is on you as the mentee. You lead the relationship. You're setting the agenda, you're setting the cadence, you're setting the tone and structure. It's really up to you to navigate that space and then help the mentor help you. Also, when you're starting out, especially through HackOut, and as you're starting to sort of go from idea to MVP to scaling and growth and all of these exciting parts of the journey that's ahead of you, remember that it's about progress and not perfection. So focusing on right now with plans for the future is the best thing you can do. And trying to think about the mentors that you want for where you are right now, who have the potential to be long-term mentors that can see you grow from idea and concept all the way to the point of, say, IPO or an acquisition. So that is my presentation. I would love to open up the floor to questions. Desmond, I think you're on mute.
Every time. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're back. I was saying thank you so much for your talk. One of the things I really like that you talked about is thinking about your mentor meeting from a human first standpoint and like that radical empathy. I think that that's something that is so key in any relationship that we're having and that we're trying to cultivate. So I really love that. But yeah, we've got some questions that I have for you. So we'll start with the first one on the feed from Paula Nguyen. She says, how do you handle conflicting advice from multiple mentors or advice that you don't necessarily agree with?
Trust your gut. You're the founder. You're the person that's coming up with this baby and this idea. It's important to trust your own internal compass and discernment if you're getting advice fatigue. I'm definitely guilty of this in terms of asking, all I need to do is ask like 3 people. And usually I kind of know where I want to go anyway, but asking, 7 to 10 people about the same topic can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is to just take a step back, kind of look at the overlap in terms of the advice you're getting and see what the middle of the Venn diagram looks like. If you get 10 different overlapping stories, what is the core center that aligns all of them? And that's probably where the truth lies. But again, you have to trust your gut. In terms of not agreeing with it, that's okay. You're a human being, and I think it's fair for you to say so and also explain why respectfully. So let's say, for example, you're building, a new type of phone. Because I have my phone right here. So let's say you're building a new type of phone, right? And you're getting advice that instead of building a phone, perhaps you should build, a water bottle, because that's also right here, just off the top of my head examples. So clearly that advice may not be applicable if they're suggesting you create an entirely new product to solve a completely different problem. So it's up to you, again, as the one owning that relationship, to think of a creative way to get the answers you need. So if I were in that situation and someone was saying, hey, Janice, I know you want to build an iPhone, but I really think that you should make a green plastic water bottle instead, ask them why. Like, how did you get to that conclusion? That's really interesting to me. Say more and see if you can find that middle of the Venn diagram again. And if you can't, say, okay, that's helpful feedback. That's good to know. Thanks for sharing your input. Here's how I'm thinking about this. Let me know what your thoughts are on this approach. Again, owning that relationship, finding a way to be respectful, and pivoting the conversation in a direction that is fruitful to both parties. Sometimes it's just a miscommunication.
Makes sense. Cool. We'll go to the next one from Katie McNeil, which says, HackOut is a weekend-long event with so many things to do. How would you recommend maximizing mentorship in such a short period of time?
I just got super excited. I just got a cheesy grin thinking about my own experience. So prior to building the mentor method, I was certified in entrepreneurship from MIT and got an opportunity to do a week-long boot camp in Seoul, South Korea. Out of like 5,000 people who applied, they picked 72 founders globally to go out for a week for a business boot camp. Basically, we took our ideas. Some were venture-backed already, some weren't. But it was a packed 5 to 6 days. I think I slept on average like 9 hours that entire week. So I get it. I'm sharing that because I totally get it. But I also remember just how fruitful those mentor relationships were. So Hyung-Soo and Eileen were the two that I really connected with, and I still think about them pretty often because that early advice, and Bill Aulette, the head of the entire MIT program, but their advice was so critical in the early kernels of the mentor method that I used them, and I still kind of refer back to those notes 4+ years later. So in terms of maximizing mentorship, finding those like 5 to 10 minutes where you can just sit down, ask them a couple of questions, see how they're doing. Honestly, like some of my mentor relationships from that program, I was just like, man, this is a lot. Like, how are you handling all of this? And you have your business. And also remember that the mentors are there to help you. You know, they're donating their time because they believe in you already. You know, they believe in you before you even have a concept sometimes. So really leverage that and be vulnerable to share what's on your mind, have some concentrated questions ahead of time. I think setting an agenda and saying, can we meet for 15 minutes while we get a walk, while we take a, well, virtual. So can we meet for 15 minutes over Zoom and I'll drink my coffee and you can drink yours, and set up an agenda ahead of time is super helpful. I just think agenda, strategy ahead of time just makes things way more efficient.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then we did get a couple that I think are really good for a virtual setting. So do you mind if I ask those as well?
I would love it if you did.
Okay, so we've got two from Sharon Bryant. The first one says, are there any special considerations in building a mentor relationship virtually?
Be considerate of time and the fact that studies keep showing that working from home actually makes you work longer and harder. And be empathetic to that. I think that's something
Radical empathy, yes.
It's important. You know, you can't build a business without having some semblance of a soul, I think. I think that's a differentiator now. But yeah, I think that's the big one. Recognizing and having respect for people's schedules. Try to set those meetings up maybe a week or two ahead of time. I think it's a little bit harder to get those same week meetings. I haven't had a lot of those. Usually I try to push it a week or two unless absolutely critical, but try to remember that everybody's going through a lot right now. In terms of finding those mentors, LinkedIn is extremely active. Instagram is very active. I'm not on Facebook much, but I hear that there are opportunities there as well if that's your preferred social medium of choice. So whether that's responding to a comment or just sending a cold outreach, as I mentioned before, people are very open to it, and recognizing that networking events are just now virtual, and that those cold outreaches are less about sales and more about just connecting the way you normally would.
Yeah, I was going to say a big thing is going to events like HackOut. There are so many people who are creating wonderful communities outside of HackOut as well. So attending those events, even though there is so much going on, is going to be super helpful in the long run and maintaining a lot of those relationships.
I agree. It's so important to do. Even setting up like virtual happy hours and things. One thing that I've done with some of my mentors especially is using a company like Sourced Cocktails or Grizzly or Drizzly, whatever one, but like ordering like a little cocktail set a few days before the meeting and then getting their address and shipping it to them. That way it's like I'm buying them a drink.
That is so cool.
We're at happy hour. So yeah,
Nice.
that's expensive. It is not the same as happy hour specials.
No, not at all.
Really helpful. And you can find little things like that, right? Maybe it's sending like a $5 Grubhub e-card or something, or whatever you can to still have that feeling of interacting and not just staring at a screen is very helpful.
Cool. So we have one more from Sharon, and it is, how do you exit gracefully from a mentor relationship that is not working? And I think you touched on this a little bit for if you're having those beginning conversations, but maybe if you can go into a long-standing mentorship relationship that, you know, has just found its end. How do you exit from something like that?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Because you never want to burn a bridge. That's very important. As I mentioned before, the world is small and networks get even smaller the further you are in your career. So what I found helpful is to just be honest while also still being respectful. So saying, you know, thank you. This was super helpful. I really appreciate everything that you've done. Right now, I feel like I'm in a position where I'm focusing on these 3 things instead. But I do want to stay in touch and keep you updated on our progress if that's comfortable for you too. And then leaving it at that.
Yeah.
And then seeing how they respond.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. You're really wonderful, and we really appreciate your presence and helping us teach people about entrepreneurship. So is there anything that you want to leave us with, any place that we can find you or your work?
Yes, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Janice Omadeke, PMP. And then you can also connect with me on Instagram at Janice Omadeke.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Desmond.
Awesome. I think that we're going to bring Julian back and wrap it up.
Hey,
Hi.
that was great.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm not on mute, am I? No, okay. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you. Yes, you are not on
great.
mute.
There's a couple, actually, Desmond, there's a couple points I wanted to bring up about how this will exactly apply to HackOut. One, I don't know if we talked about it enough, but of course, the HackOut team is organizing a bunch of mentors to be actively part of the weekend. But then also because HackOut's being produced by StartOut, StartOut has a huge mentor network, correct?
Yes, they do. StartOut has an active mentor network that you can be a part of. If you go to startout.org, you can log into their online mentor network, and you can access mentors from all over the US, which is really, really helpful. You input your information on your business, what you're working on, different things like that, and they'll help you get matched to people that would like to help you with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be providing all the HackOut participants a list of all the mentors who make themselves available for the entire weekend. And I think for the participants, you can go through that list and learn about the backstories of all those mentors. And also via LinkedIn, you can see what people those mentors are connected to and get further connections from them. So really, you can drive those mentor relationships from the participant perspective to get all the mentorship you could possibly need, I think.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I think today's workshop was great. Next week for so application deadline is coming up when, Desmond?
It was actually on last Saturday, so applications are technically closed. We are looking at potentially opening that up again, pending our diversity numbers and a couple of other factors. So we may be making an announcement later, but as of right now, they are closed.
Okay. So cool. We're happy to have all the applications we have had. Yes, well, that's the workshop for today. And I hope you all enjoyed it.
Cool. Thanks, Julian.
All right. Bye. Everybody.